Were there any other groups of people that were placed in these internment camps as well within Trinidad and Tobago, not just Jews?
No. So the Battle of Britain begins, and within 1 week, there's an announcement that says all Jews must report to police headquarters on St. Vincent Street by noon tomorrow.
Do you do interviews often?
Not anymore.
No? Why not?
I prep people for interviews now. Because when we're abroad, like we just came back from Senegal, the ambassador had a lot of interviews to do. So I would prep him. I would be the person, getting him ready for the interviews. Because I don't represent the government, I'm an employee. I don't represent the Israeli government.
Right.
But the skills that we use, the skills that I have related to multimedia are priceless abroad when you're trying to get a message out, when you're trying to say something. And most people aren't used to being in front of a camera. Most people aren't used to having to have notes that you follow and trying to be succinct in what they're saying. So that I can help you. And I love doing it because I love writing and I love reading and I understand all of this stuff, and it's kind of cool to me,
I'm so honored to have you here. This is, for everybody, this is John Roxborough. We met out in town.
Correct.
Set up by a friend. So you had just mentioned you have what is it that you want to say?
So as someone who came to Israel 8 years ago, by the time I got here, I was, mature in more ways than you could imagine. I felt I knew an enormous number of things because of the life that I lived, a full life. And the part that really shocks me is that when I got here, I realized that it was not what I thought it was. I am like most people. I don't know much about the country, but I think I do because I've been reading reports and I've been watching television. But just a little bit about me so we can get started.
Yeah.
First of all, I am what you'd call an island boy. I am born in the Caribbean. I'm from a place called Trinidad and Tobago.
Can we settle this? Is it Caribbean or is it Caribbean?
It is both. And I've had it from linguistics people at Columbia, where we go, which I'm sure it's one or the other. I said you're going to find that they're both correct. So the people are from the area called Caribs. The Caribs defeated the Arawaks in most of the Caribbean. Those are the two dominant tribes. So by the time Columbus got there in 1492, most of the survivors were Caribs. So we are the people of the Caribs. So therefore we are the Caribbean people. That's why that pronunciation is used there. In North America, they say Caribbean because it's B-E-A-N.
Well, if they taught that in school, I totally missed it.
There's no reason to, because the Caribbean, with the exception of what we'll be talking about later, is really not very significant in terms of the history that's taught where you and I spent so much of our lives, let's say in North America. But I am from that island. It's called Trinidad and Tobago. And there's the Turks and Caicos. But there's the only two places, I think, on the planet where you have two words that have one country.
Yeah, why is that?
Because Trinidad is one island, Tobago is one island. They were independent, run by different European powers all the way through. And at one point in time, just about 1839, the British held both countries. And it's not because they had anything in common, it's because they were the closest to each other. They said, let's make them like a protectorate. There's a word that they use when they put two together to make one, and we say, let's make it Trinidad and Tobago. For your information, there is no comparison between Trinidad and Tobago. They are ethnically, religiously, racially, culturally, completely different. But they came together in a forced manner, and they've been able to get through independence in 1962. And when you look at it now, it looks like one cohesive unit, but Tobago still looks and feels nothing like Trinidad, except they are part of that union and they're very proud of it.
Can you explain the different cultures that...
Sure. So Tobago was predominantly a slave culture, which means that the people that you see in Tobago are dark African They are bigger. I don't mean to stereotype. They are. There's a reason why I'm doing this, and then I'll set you up. I'm setting you up for something. They are bigger.
Are you setting up for me to for people to call me a racist?
Right. Call me the racist. I'm from there. So they are bigger. They eat different foods. They look different, and they speak different. And the reason is they were never connected to the island next to it, which is the opposite. Meaning what? So I am the prototypical Trinidadian. I have 4 grandparents from 4 different parts of the world. So on my mother's side, I have her father, which is the son of 2 African slaves. So my mother's father is a black man who's obviously from Africa. His wife is Spanish from Spain. On my father's side, my name is Roxborough, which is Scottish. On my father's side, my grandfather is a Scotsman who lived and died in the house in front of me. His wife was from India, East India. So I have 4 grandparents from 4 completely different parts of the world. And why am I prototypically Trinidadian? Because when you go through Trinidad, that's what you see. You see an enormous mix of cultures. So in Trinidad, I'm normal. In Israel, I'm like, oh my gosh, what do we do with you? As the people at the medical center said last week, we don't know how to define you. I said, it's okay. Any of them will be fine.
Well, was it like growing up? So did you get to grow up with a bunch of different cultural aspects, or were you guys very much into the Trinidadian culture?
The Trinidadian culture is a mix of cultures, meaning that the national creed is that here, every creed and race finds an equal place. Literally, what we say, that's our anthem. The last 4 words are every creed and race finds an equal place and may bless our nation. So we grew up in a place in which diversity is not something that you teach or something that you learn. It's something that you are.
It's just known.
You live it every day. My wife is a big fan of our foods. She's Israeli. She's Jewish. But she loves the fact that she can get the most wonderful East Indian foods. She can get the most wonderful South American foods. There's no such thing as great British food. If there were, she would have that as well. But the diversity in foods and the way that people look, the way they live their lives, it is one of the few places in the world where every religion literally has freedom and they have their own holidays. So there are like 6 major religions in Trinidad. They all have a national holiday that everyone has to stop and observe with their brethren, so to speak.
So what was it like growing up? Because your journey seems to have taken you on to coming to Israel.
Yes.
And seems pretty engulfed with the Jewish culture. So how did you get from Trinidad and Tobago to Israel?
Okay, the Israeli journey is one specific part of it, and if you don't mind, I can address that.
The mic's yours, man.
Yeah. So Israel has always been of an interest to me. So I've been in the United States since 1991, and I've been a part of the Jewish culture since I got there in 1991, meaning that I am from the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area. And in the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area, it's the 3rd largest group of Jewish people in the United States.
Right, people either make Aliyah to Florida or to Israel.
Absolutely, right. So you have New York, you have Los Angeles, you have Miami. Okay, so it's something that for some reason I've always had. I would like to say that I have a heart that's a Jewish heart, which is difficult for a Jew to understand until they realize when they meet me that I am not ethnically Jewish in any way. But if you ask me, I will tell you that all of the things that are relative to Jews or relevant to Jews are things that I have embraced for at least 40 years.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what do you mean? What do you assume or you believe a Jewish heart is?
A Jewish heart is someone who believes the Jewish people are the progenitors of what became those who call themselves Christians. Okay?
Okay.
So we say that some people are Christians, some people are Jews. A Jewish heart means that the things that Jews believe, I am a student with Bible. I spent many, many, many years I'm going to use the word ghetto in this interview just for in the really difficult neighborhoods in the United States. It's what I did for 20 years. So for 20 years, my life was about getting into places, I'm going to call some names. In Miami, there's Liberty City, which is like Grand Theft Auto. In Fort Lauderdale, there's Liberty Heights, which are predominantly African American neighborhoods that in the late 80s, I got there in 91, in the late 80s, there were race riots, 3 of them in Miami. So by the time we got there, Miami was a racially charged because 3 riots had taken place.
What sparked them?
What sparked them? The police actions. All 3 of the riots, because I am a researcher and because I had to find out the root cause of this. The police actions as it relates to the local community, the people felt that there was an overreach by the police in terms of over-policing, shootings without justification, arrests for no reason, and general harassment of the people. So this is just me on reflection saying this is what happened before.
But it's interesting because it doesn't. I feel like I say like it's interesting a lot. It seems like the same. I'm not calling it a talking point, but it seems like the same talk. I'm going to call it a talking point for this, but it seems like the same talking point still used today.
But not in Miami. Here's the difference. Have you been to Miami?
I was born in Florida.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, but I haven't been back in a long time.
So this is what is different. If you go to Miami today, all the way up from Miami to Fort Lauderdale to Palm Beach, you would find a relative absence of conflict, relatively compared to the rest of the country. And the reason for that is because there were people, including the people that I was associated with for 20 years, who spent time building the communities, bringing it back together, which is my gift. That is what I'm supposed to do. Keeping people together, bringing groups to work, to act, to help, to be a part of our community. So when I go to Miami now, I took my wife there last year. I said, I'm going to take you to the worst neighborhood that I used to work in last year. So we drive around and I make the turn at Sheridan Street in Fort Lauderdale, next to Federal Highway. And as I turn, I'm a little bit surprised because as I look around, the place that was the worst, most rundown, drug-infested, stereotypically horrible African-American neighborhood, I did not recognize because it looked just like Jaffa Street.
That's awesome.
It is the justification for a life that was spent believing with hundreds of people that we could make our communities better. So we tell people, go to Miami and you tell me what racial divisions you see. Because after 20 years of working into it, I stopped, as did several other people, and you look at the community and it works, it gets along. Miami is a wonderful example of how many different people from many different faiths can work together to make the communities better. And that's not with the direction I thought you thought we'd go into, but that is what I spent 20 years doing.
I don't really I know the direction of where we're going to get to, but we sat down and we talked a little bit a few weeks ago, but I don't really know much about you.
Correct.
You know, you and I share a friend. What's up, buddy? We share a friend, and he's somebody I trust, and he was like, "This dude, you gotta talk to him." So what brought you to Miami? What was the pull to go to Miami and work on the communities in Miami rather than back home?
Okay, so back home, from a very early age, and when I very early, I've got to tell you, someone asked me the question last night. They said, when did you think you knew what you wanted to do in your life? And I thought about it, and the answer is somewhere between ages 4 and 5, I felt I knew what I was supposed to do.
That's crazy.
And I had my father with me, and for some reason, my father just encouraged me. Every time I would say, Dad, we were raised Roman Catholic, which is really contrary to what you see now. So we're raised Roman Catholic, and anytime I said, Dad, I want to help, I want to do, he would encourage me to do it. And my mother is always, I am literally, I look exactly like my mom, I have her heart. So I have 2 parents who encourage me to do, to help, to be a part of people's lives, so that my life is fulfilled, their lives are fulfilled, and the world's a better place. I'm sorry to make it so simplistic, because that's really my entire life's work. So how do I take this, extrapolate it, and how do I get to Israel? Because, right? So this person gets to the United States only because of the work I was doing in Trinidad and part of it in Toronto. So I've been helping orphans, widows, destitute, the impoverished since about age 24. So in 1991, the work that I'm doing comes to the attention of certain people, and they said, listen, what would you like to do? I said, well, I would like to do this in the States, because I had been to Fort Lauderdale, and we'd started working with some of the people who work there, some of the denominations who work there, and it was going really, really well. And I said, I thought my life would take me back to Trinidad, and instead I realized I'm going to be here. Like, this is going to be my home. I had my 3 little kids with me.
Here meaning?
Here meaning in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
Not Miami, Fort Lauderdale, that's the area that we're in. And I realized, okay, I'm going to be here for a while. So I kept working. And the stuff that we kept doing kept bearing fruit. Almost like in scripture, how do you know if something is blessed? How do you know if something is planted in the right place? A tree. It will grow, it will blossom, it will grow, it will bear fruit. And the fruit will remain on it until the fruit becomes mature. If it doesn't, wait until it becomes mature. If it drops off before, you're in the wrong place. So you must have all of these conditions. And we kept seeing the results of our efforts in people's lives all the time, so that I was able to do my business, because I've always been in business, and I was able to help at the same time. And I did that from 1991 till 2011.
Man, your heart.
So it was easy for one reason. I didn't have to try. It was like waking up every day and doing what you're supposed to do. And for some reason, I was always confident that the things around me will be taken care of. Things such as what? 3 little kids, which became 4. They've got to go to college, right? They've got to get cars, right? They need whatever. So all of the stuff that they've ever needed, they've always had. So I never was really worried about anything. It was just a matter of how much can I invest? How much can I give? Because I knew one day it would come to an end. You cannot keep going like that all the time. And one day, I went to Trinidad. I took a group of Trinidad with me to an orphanage. And my sister had a really big job. And I went into her office, introduced them to my sister. She is the CEO of the city of Port of Spain, the biggest person in the capital, more important than the mayor is. And they left the room. She looked at me. She said, John, the day will come when you won't need to do this anymore, and it's going to be fine. You don't need to help anymore, and it's going to be fine. That's my big sister. I'm the little brother, right? Little brothers are
Are you
always...
the youngest? I'm also the youngest.
I am the 4th of 7, right?
You're 4 of 7?
I'm the middle child, right?
Oh.
So she tells me this, and she's dead serious. She's always dead serious, by the way. She says, one day you won't need to do this anymore, and it's going to be okay. And within 2 years of that, I realized, you know what? It's okay. I can now go on with the rest of my life.
But what brought her to say that to you?
Because she's watched me. She's watched me from the time I was. She's 8 years older than I am, so she's watched me go through everything for 4.5 decades. So she knows her brother inside out.
Right.
But I think she saw that I was working really hard, like harder than usual. And she was
You were
like,
pushing.
I was
You were
pushing.
pushing.
And you don't need to push. Like if you're in the right place, you're doing the right thing, you don't need to push. You may need a break. You just may need to stop.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you got to push yourself, in times of, it's okay to be tired. It's okay to keep going. But I understand needing a little bit of a break for sure. But let me make sure I'm getting this straight. You're a Holocaust historian.
I am.
You're a Holocaust researcher.
I am a researcher. Because I do not like to call myself a Holocaust historian. I would say I have a PhD from Seoul. That's not what I am. So this is where the story becomes really interesting. Remember, I just told you I am from a place called Trinidad and Tobago, which you would think has nothing to do with the Holocaust whatsoever, except for this. In 2011, I am sitting in Miami at Florida International University, which is my school, and I had finished a project, and I opened Google, and I put the equivalent to this in it. It said, Jews, World War II, Trinidad and Tobago, and I hit, and something popped onto my screen that said this. I'll paraphrase. It says, United States Holocaust Memorial Museum at the top. It's a testimony. the person says, my name is Dr. Heinz Schwartz, and I am a Jew who was placed in an internment camp by the British in Trinidad during World War II. This is how it begins. So it's 1 page long, and I read the entire thing, and I said, none of this makes any sense.
Did you have, with Judaism, right? I have had this kind of romanticized, kind of like a romantic relationship with what I believe Judaism is or should be. And sometimes the more I learn about it and the history of Jewish people, and that maybe we haven't necessarily been the most stand-up people in the world, you know, in our history, it like breaks me down a little bit. And it's like, because I believe that Jews, we as a Jewish people, should hold ourselves to a certain standard. Yes. And when we don't live up to that, I mean, look, I'm not the face of Jewish people at all, but when I feel that I'm not holding up to that, or that we as a nation aren't holding up to that, it breaks me down a little bit. When you found out that the place where you grew up in, and you have such a love for this country, when you found out what happened there, did it not, I don't want to say break you, but like shatter something in you when it comes to how you viewed your home?
My first reaction was, this could never be true. It makes no sense. Not only am I from Trinidad and Tobago, I know its history really, really well. I've told you about my relatives. Some of them are very prominent. We are a part of that community in more ways than you can imagine. And I did not believe the thing that I saw. So what I did, as a good researcher should do, is that I picked up my cell phone and I called the number at the bottom, because I said, this is a hoax. It could never be the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. That's the extent that I did not believe what I was seeing. And I did it. I dialed the number. Someone answered the phone. Earlier they said, hi, United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. May I help you? And I said, yes, I am. And I'm calling on behalf of this thing that I just saw. She says, oh, you may need to speak to Sandy. Hold on 1 second, please. And the phone rings once, and Sandy, can't remember the name, I'm just using Sandy as a stand-in.
Sandy's a great name.
Yeah, Sandy's a great name. So, and by the way, she has a personality. So she goes, I'm Sandy here. How can I help you? So I said, I am so-and-so. I'm at X university, and I just read this. Can you verify it? She says, not only can I verify it, John, I took the testimonial myself. I am the person who entered it into the record. And I said, you did? She said, yes. And she said, we have several others of that ilk who were in Trinidad at that time, and we have it here at the US HMC. I said, really? And she said the final thing. She says, well, would you like to speak to Dr. Schwartz? And at this point in time, my heart is racing. My pupils, I'm sure, are so dilated, it looks all green. And I said, yes, I would. To which she said, okay, in that case, I would send a message to Dr. Schwartz, and if he'd like to, he will return a call to you.
Who's Dr. Schwartz?
Dr. Schwartz is my name is Dr. Heinz Schwartz, and I am a Jew who was placed in an internment camp by the British in Trinidad during World War II. It's that Dr. Schwartz. So the next day the phone rings, and from a number I don't recognize, and I answer it, and then you're gonna like this, Ailey. In a German Trinidad accent, he says, this is Dr. Schwartz. I speak to John Roxborough, please.
German Trinidad.
A German Trinidad accent. I can hear the Trinidadian in him, but I'm hearing the Austro-German thing. It's very clear, but I can hear he sounds like me.
I can't even imagine what it sounds like. I can't imagine what it sounds like.
But to me, I know it. I'm like, he's speaking like a Trinidadian who is German. And I said, speaking. He says, this is Dr. Schwartz. I understand you'd like to speak with me. So this begins a journey from 2011 that doesn't really come to a real culmination until 2016, when I come off a plane at Ben Gurion. I'm about to enroll, I've already enrolled, at Haifa University in the Holocaust Studies program. They partnered with Yad Vashem, and the person who saw that article and picked up his phone that day, was about to complete the research for a group of people who we'll go into, of course, later on in the program. The people, the first of whom was Dr. Heinz Schwartz, a former U.S. Army psychiatrist who said he was in that camp from 1939, I think, to 1941.
Now, did you still, even after he called you, was there still a feeling of doubt or hope that it wasn't true? Or as soon as he called you, were like, damn.
As the phone, I put the phone down, and the dean of Florida International University School of Communications was Professor Alan Richards, who was Jewish, who was a very good friend of mine. And the second I put the phone down, I picked it up and I called Alan. I said, Alan, you're not going to believe this, but I just got off the phone with this person, and this is what he said. And Professor Richards said to me, John, I just want to let you know, I'm not sure if you can see this on the program. He says, I just want to let you know, I call bullshit. I call bullshit. I said, why is this, Alan? He says, my dad is Jewish, and he was in the intelligence service in World War II. And he spoke a lot to me about what he did, and he never mentioned anything like this. He says, however, if you think you're onto something, go ahead. Let me know how it turns out.
So how many years was it from when you put that phone down with Dr. Schwartz till you got to Haifa, and what happened in between that?
5 years. So in this 5-year period, I begin, I have the ability, because I've got a lot of contacts, I've been around a lot, I begin getting the interviews with the people who were still connecting the pieces, connecting the points. And I eventually got to speak to 3 of them who were still alive. And I eventually got to fly to Trinidad 3 times to speak to someone whose name is Hans Stetcher. Hans Stetcher is crucial to the story because he becomes the main character for everything that I do from this point onward. He's important for 3 reasons. Hans Stetcher, his name in the Caribbean, he became one of the most successful Caribbean businessmen. He never left the Caribbean. He never left Trinidad. Even after the war, most people left. He stayed. So Stetcher's Jewelers is still alive, even though Hans Stetcher has been dead for 9 years. But I was able to interview him on 3 occasions, and those were the turning point interviews, because not only did I have credibility for my research, I had credibility because Hans Stetcher himself adopted me, and he said, you will get anything you want. I will give you anything that you need, information, contacts, so that you can finish this story if it's not finished in my lifetime.
So what's the story?
The story is this. As the hostilities break out across Germany, very quickly, most of the people were wealthy. Those that I'm going to get to. The people who were not wealthy maybe were not as informed as others, but there were Jews throughout Europe who were trying to find a way out very quickly. They realized that things were deteriorating fast, and doors started closing, and ghettos started rising, and people started getting arrested, and glass and crystal kept breaking. And someone found a loophole that found a British colony called Trinidad, in which if you paid a sum, you would be able to go to this country. You get a pass, no matter who you are. I believe it's £250. If I could be wrong, I'll double check my records. With a payment of £250, you will get a travel document, no matter who you are, that you can go to a British colony called Trinidad. And word of this spreads amongst Jews in 6 or 7 countries who clandestinely were able to procure this document for themselves and or their families. And they were able to leave their respective countries even after many were arrested because they had travel documents saying they were leaving Europe.
Okay, let's a little side.
Sure.
Can you explain, and I think I know the difference, but let's just get this down, the difference between a concentration camp and an internment camp.
So an internment camp is a place where people are kept for different reasons. A concentration camp has the inference that it may also be a death camp. But it doesn't mean that those people in internment camps are not killed also. Because internment camps is not contrary. So this is something I can now say very clearly. I couldn't say it 15 years ago because people didn't believe it, but there are researchers now who specialize in this. Internment camps is not a Nazi thing or a German thing. Internment camps are a British thing. First introduced by the British in the Boer War between 1899 and 1900 in South Africa.
What was the Boer War?
The Boer War is the people who are Boers. They are white, by the way. We'll fight.
Sorry.
We'll fight. We'll fight. No. We're at war with the British, but the Boers who had the natives on their side, the black South Africans, and that war was a war between the British and the Boers, in which the British constructed unique buildings that all had some things in common with every single concentration camp that you see now. Because we found out later, and I need to tell you this part of the story. The first thing Dr. Schwartz told me on our first of 3 interviews, so he was not in person, he was on the telephone. He said, I need to tell you something, John. After I left the army, I toured every single concentration camp in Poland. And I got to Majdanek. And when I got to Majdanek, I was shocked because Majdanek was just like Trinidad. I said, excuse me? He said the camp at Majdanek was exactly the same as the camp I was in Trinidad. No gun towers, no crematoriums, no gas chambers. But the buildings were exactly the same. They were built, if I could,
like
I could
barracks?
tell you, they were barracks, not just barracks, because they were all barracks. But this particular one apparently is as if someone took the exact same blueprint and built this one and Majdanek.
Huh.
Because the concentration camps are a British thing. They are not a German thing. The Germans copied it from the British, and then they added these unique features to it. But it's not a German thing. The Germans had no previous history of concentration camps.
Were there any other groups of people that were placed in these internment camps as well within Trinidad and Tobago, not just Jews?
No.
Holy shit.
So I've got to go a little bit further. I can't just say no and leave it like that. So
I hope my response was like, please continue.
So the Battle of Britain starts, let's say today, and within a week there is a proclamation on the radio. There had been propaganda before speaking about Jews negatively. So they're in Trinidad, 1,500 of them, and they integrate really easily. You can understand why. Trinidad has Lebanese, it has Arabs, it has Syrians. It's that place, Chinese. When you come, it is the place that a human being can go to and fit in. So they've been there for roughly 2 years, living in complete peace, opening businesses, buying homes, building developments. They moved really quickly because they got along really well with the Christian Syrians and the Christian Lebanese. So they were actually part of that community that are from the Middle East. So they started doing really well. But then certain rumors started going around. And my people tell me that articles would suddenly appear in the newspaper, the Gazette it's called, talking about Jews. And it was strange because Jews weren't doing anything. They were literally just like everyone else. But what we did not know is that this was in play. So the Battle of Britain begins, and within 1 week, there's an announcement that says all Jews must report to police headquarters on St. Vincent Street by noon tomorrow and bring your documents with you. So Hans Stetcher, my main character, tells me that, of course, they got their stuff. The war had started. His father had even tried to volunteer to fight for the Allies. It was misconstrued. They thought he wanted to fight against the British. Anyway, long story short, so they go with their documents with all of the other Jewish families, and they are kept in the jails, in the main jails in St. Vincent Street. And the following morning, they are put on ships and taken offshore to 2 islands called Nelson Island for the men, and I believe Galeota, which is for the women. They are within sight of each other. Nelson Island was a prison. At that time, the labor leader, his name is Tubal Uriah Buzz Butler. The British hated him. He was a prisoner on the island at that time. Everyone now knows, they did not know before. So the men were on Nelson Island, the women and children were in Galeotto. And he said that evening we were able to stand before the sun shone and we were able to wave to the women and children from one island to the next. Now, the story is just beginning because they were sent to the prison, let's say today. He said we were only there for 30 days. And in 30 days, they brought the boats back to bring us back to the mainland. And when we got to the mainland, they took us to a camp that was brand new, that had been completed in 1 month. And that camp is where they stayed for anything from the next 6 months to 3 years.
Why not just keep them on the island?
There are not enough facilities. Both islands are really small. Plus, back there, you are amongst the community. And as we now learned, you may have been amongst the community, but nobody knew where you were. No one knew. And I'm going to prove it to you in a minute.
No one knew these
knew.
internment camps were happening?
The locals.
Right. How's that possible?
Because the British controlled everything. They controlled every seat of government. They controlled the police, the military. They controlled the Coast Guard. They controlled everything. They built it on their own, by themselves, and the local people did not know. How do I know this, Ailey? I will give you an example. My sister, who we spoke about before, and I'm looking at the camera for a second because we spoke last night. So my sister is Lorraine Alexander, so she's married. So I called my sister when I was doing the story, right before I met Mr. Stetcher for the first time. I said, Lorraine, I want to tell you something. She is the CEO of the city of Port of Spain. The city of Port of Spain controls every square inch of land in the city. Okay?
Okay.
She is the chief executive officer. She's been there since age 17. She's now the head. She's probably close to 60. Okay? So I tell her, listen, where could there have been an internment camp in Port of Spain? Now, she's my big sister, so I'm the little brother. I'm always giving her problems. She says, I can promise you one thing. I am the CEO. I know every plot of land here, and I promise you, John, that there was no internment camp anywhere in Port of Spain. Now, this is 2014.
Can you just educate me? What is Port of Spain?
Oh, I'm sorry. Port of Spain is the capital of Trinidad.
Okay.
Yeah, so the capital city, I'm sorry, is called Port of Spain.
Okay.
So she's the head of the capital city of Port of Spain, right?
Hey, you got some ins,
Right. Yeah, some things here. So she says this, and I go, okay. I said, but I'm going to be there in a couple of months because I'm doing some research. I'll be there. I get there, and my mom wakes me up the first morning. I'm at my mom's house. She says, wake up. Your sister's on the phone. She wants to talk to you. It's 6 in the morning. She said, have you seen the newspaper today? I said, no, I just got up. You woke me up. What's going on? She said, on page 13, I believe, she said, there's an article about Mr. Stetcher, Hans Stetcher of Stetcher's Jewelers. He gave an interview in which he's telling everyone that he was placed in an internment camp in Port of Spain by the British during World War II. Now, I have come to Trinidad to interview Mr. Stetcher because I have just been interviewing some of his fellow young men who are now old men. I've interviewed them in the United States. So he's my last person, but he's the key person. I knew that all along. My sister said it's on page 13. It's exactly what you said. I said, okay. I'll meet him at 1 o'clock today. And that day I met Hans Stetcher for the first time, the very same day.
What year was this?
I would say about 2014. I've got the newspaper article. I can always verify. Should be about 2014. So about 2 years or so before I came to Israel.
Okay, I want to get to these people who you've been interviewing because I have to... What was their shift in reality of escaping the Holocaust in Europe, coming to a place where they probably felt free, and then all of a sudden it's like Europe caught up with them?
It was shock. Several of them didn't make it through the camp. There was a renowned professor. I'm sorry, his name slips me. I'll get it for you if you need it. There was a renowned professor in camp, and one day Hans Stetcher told me that they called him to say that the professor had just hung himself. He said there were 3 people who, in his time there, who killed themselves because they could not believe that they had escaped that to now be in this place, have total freedom, and then have every single thing taken away from them in a place that has nothing to do with Jews whatsoever. I think this is where the most important question comes in. Why Trinidad? because that was my question. I felt, I guess, very similar to how you felt. It makes no sense. Why is this happening in Trinidad? It didn't happen anywhere else in the Caribbean. It happened two
Oh.
other places. Newfoundland, which was not yet part of Canada, and the Isle of Man, which I've been reading articles on it. In the last 5 years, there have been articles in the Isle of Man in Great Britain about Jews being interned there, which I knew a lot about, and in Australia. But it was always done the same way by the same people. And the information related to it is still very difficult to get to. The Freedom of Information Act has freed up all information from World War II related to this. And despite my years of trying to get detail, I cannot get any detail from Great Britain. Everything I've gotten, thankfully, is because of a source who gave me a bit of information. Other than that, to this day, I cannot tell you what you need to know.
So if I ask you, what was the British excuse
Correct.
in Trinidad and
I
Tobago?
can tell you this.
Okay.
It's because they were considered to be fifth columnist. The fifth column, the German fifth column,
What does that mean?
those Jews who, I'm sorry.
Like, what's the fourth column, third column,
So the
second
fifth
column, first
The
column?
fifth column, you know how you hear stories about Nazis and going to Argentina?
Yes.
Okay, so they are the fifth column. People who would spirit them away, hide them, create fake companies, make boats with different names, transport them. These people were called spies.
Yeah, they have the whole documentaries on people. You know, there's a whole theory that even Hitler himself, was carried off to.
So those people are called, and it was a word that was a brand new word. It's an author in the New York Times, I believe in 1942, who used the expression in the United States for the first time. There wasn't a name for people like it. And he said, these people are like fifth columnists, where they are Germans disguised as Jews, in this case, so Trinidad, disguised as refugees, because that's what they were, who are setting up Germans' empire all over the world. So the British excuse was that they were fifth columnists, but it's a poor excuse. It doesn't stand any test.
Doesn't seem like it would hold water.
It doesn't hold anything. It's a feeble excuse, and they've been able to get away with it because no one can prove otherwise.
So how did this affect you? How did this affect your life moving forward, finding out that your home, I guess, let's just did a bad thing?
Yeah.
I don't know how
I do not consider
characterize
myself.
it.
I was born under the British Empire, so I'll just say this. I grew up under independent Trinidad and Tobago, so I am very much aware that the vestiges of colonialism are really difficult to root out, because by definition, it is a group of people who control, a small group of people who control a large group of people using measures that you would find very difficult to believe. So do I believe that the British did this? Of course, they did much worse. They did much worse than this to many of their colonies. They did it everywhere that they ran. This is just me being personal a bit for you. The French colonies were given French citizenship. Even you go to Paris now, you see a lot of African-looking people. And we say, oh my gosh, look, France is overrun by Africans. Well, they are actually French. If you go to Great Britain, you don't see that. And Great Britain controlled much more of the world than France, because Great Britain gave citizenship to no one.
Why?
Because they're British.
Really? That's
Yeah, when you go, you say, I see some foreigners here, not like you see in France. Those people are French.
I have some British friends. We're gonna have to talk about this.
Yeah. So you don't know. So anti-French, but the French gave citizenship. The British gave citizenship to absolutely no one. So it doesn't really bother me. And at this point, for the sake of this story, I don't care. I don't need to know any more about the British. I need to tell the story about the Jewish people, and I need to complete the story about Trinidad and Tobago, and that's my goal in life.
Why do you feel the need to, I guess it seems like, help the Jewish people? I don't know if that's how you would characterize it, but also taking a little step to the side. When we talk about colonialism, and you come from a place that was colonized and decolonized, what's your feeling? What does it bring up in you when you hear people say that the Jews have colonized Israel?
It's a heartbreaking rendition of a lie. It makes me think that that all of the countries who fought for their independence from the colonies and created their own identities, it feels as if it was all a waste, because in Israel, the British control Israel, modern day Israel. They control Palestine. And they ruled Palestine because they said that the people in Palestine, particularly the Jews, were incapable of ruling themselves. They said that the Jews in Palestine were incapable, so we will rule them. Sort of a slight twist on what they've done everywhere. That's the reason, that's the rationale, by the way, for the mandate and why it was carried out all the way through. We will rule them because they are incapable of ruling themselves. So when I see the Jewish people establish themselves together with 2 million, so 22% of Israel, for those of anyone who's listening who doesn't know this, 22% of Israel is Arab. And having spent my time at Haifa University, which is in the north, which is, very, very, very Arab, to know that every Arab student is treated like a Jewish student at the University of Haifa, and I'm sure at just about every other university, we have 9 or so here, to know that the majority of doctors are Arab doctors and not Jewish, to know that 80% of all pharmacists,
Is that true?
80% of all pharmacists are Arab, to know that 65% of all nurses are Arab. If you tell me that half of all doctors are Arab, if you tell me that this is what colonialism is, I have to tell you that you have no idea what you're talking about. That's just my little take on it. You are clueless. And when you use the word apartheid, I grew up as a little boy. The second book I got was a book about Nelson Mandela. And I remember in 1991, there was a song by Paul Simon in which the Graceland album, he had been to South Africa, and he was saying, bring back Nelson Mandela, bring him back home to Soweto. I want to see him walking down the streets with Winnie Mandela tomorrow. And one day, Robben's Island opened up and Nelson Mandela stepped out. And I remember the impossible dream that this man and these people, the South African people, had a chance to come out from apartheid. Because, as you know, the Africans make, I think, about 6% of the people. And apartheid was one of the most horrible things imaginable.
They had like almost like color graphs of the shade of black you were, right?
And the shade of disenfranchisement that you were entitled to.
Yeah.
So we had the colors, the Indians, so this word is apartheid. The word that's being used now and is being used amongst an ill-informed populace is that this word is being used here. And I have to tell you, I don't know how it happened. It's like one of the greatest marketing campaigns ever. It has succeeded despite any evidence to the.
Well, it's one of the things that I find pretty remarkable when it comes to the Jewish people and how we're viewed. A lot of the times I feel like people look at us and they see like it's almost like a funhouse mirror. Everything seems a little bit backwards, and no amount of convincing can really convince people that they're wrong. And I don't get it. It seems supernatural.
So 6 years ago, I'm in the States, and I'm in Massachusetts. I'm speaking to a very well-educated young black male. And he said, how can you even go to Israel? It's an apartheid country. I said, apartheid, it's a very strong word. He says, He says, you have no idea what those people do to those people. I said, listen, man, I grew up with Nelson Mandela. I said, this is a lot of things. I said, but my doctor is Arab. people around me are Arab. Professors are Arab. I said, no such thing existed. There aren't settlements, Soweto and the other settlements. There are no such things where people live in depraved conditions with no water, no toilets, no food, no. I said, so the word you're using is misplaced. And I realized that he was very adamant, so I pulled back. So here's something I need to tell you. We seem to have lost the high ground in the African American community.
I was going to ask, there seems to be a real tension between the Jewish community and the Black community, which really bugs me. One, because the way I view the Black community in the States is, first of all, I think that they were and still should be and are supposed to be one of the most spiritual and God-fearing communities in maybe the world. Like, maybe this is just my stereotyping and stuff, but like nothing hits me like Black gospel music, period. And the things that we have each as groups experienced, I feel like are so similar in a lot of ways that it really should bring us closer together and not further apart.
Well, we've always been, the two groups have been side by side all the way through until I would say maybe 10 years ago. Albert Einstein was one of the first members of the NAACP. He is quoted as saying that I support the cause of blacks in the United States because their condition mirrors the treatment of Jews in the world. He lived his entire life and he never changed that. As a matter of fact, there are only two convocations that we know that Albert Einstein did. He was here at Hebrew University in 1948, and I'm sorry right now, it slipped me. There's a historically black...
Albert Einstein went to Hebrew University?
Yeah, went to. He spoke. He spoke here in 1948.
Oh.
Albert Einstein was here. He actually came to Israel at Hebrew University. And he was he was always wanted. Everyone wanted Professor Einstein. He would not do it. And the second one is a small HBCU, which is a historically black college. I believe it's in Virginia. So it's the only, and I have all the pictures. I have the entire story that shows Professor Einstein surrounded by the people he was most proud to speak with, African Americans back in the day. So people here don't know this. So when you say it hurts you, it hurts me because the civil rights era is very much a part of the history of African American culture, and there are only two types of people who were murdered during the civil rights era. They were blacks and Jews.
Well, I just heard that
blacks and Jews are the only two groups who were killed during the civil rights era, because the three Jewish people who were on that freedom bus movement that went down south, they were all murdered. Jews spearheaded, together with blacks, the voting rights in the South. So the history of the peoples go back forever, and they have always been close. Only very recently have I even heard of any schisms. But it's troubling because it's not just coming from the African American community. And I won't use your program to say...
you can say whatever you want.
What's the worst surprise of my life here in Israel? When Harvard had an African American president, to know that the person who created all of the conflict to ensure that she did not, that Claudine Gay did not stay as a president of Harvard is William Ackman, which is Bill Ackman. He dedicated himself to destroy her, and he did. Twice claiming that she plagiarized her papers, only to find out that his wife plagiarized her PhD dissertation at MIT multiple times. But he was dedicated and devoted to destroying Claudine Gay as the president of Harvard University. It broke my heart because he doesn't know that the Jews that I'm talking about, Dr. Heinz Schwartz, the reason he got into University of Michigan Medical School is because he didn't know he was Jewish. He spoke with a Trinidad German accent. He came from the Caribbean. He had a Trinidad passport.
Did he look Jewish?
He looks Jewish, but then what the hell? He talks like me. He talks just like me. He's an island guy.
Right, Jews aren't from the islands.
Right, Jews from the islands. He said the only reason he got in is because they did not know that he was Jewish. Because people don't realize Jews were not allowed into institutes of higher learning as recently as then. Jews in the United States. So to see someone use the power he had to destroy that and to be a part of a movement in which they create a narrative around something called DEI, which, to be quite honest, I have no idea where it came from. It's just a very, it disheartened me. There aren't many Jews doing it, so I don't mean to say this is a Jewish problem, but it really hurt me to know that that was the person who did that to Harvard University and to the president.
Look, I'm not going to necessarily say it's a Jewish problem, but I could definitely see, like, Jews, from my understanding, we want to help. We have this yearning and this pull to help. And I believe sometimes we don't do it in the correct way. You know, I mean, just like everybody else. But for some reason, I feel like we get blamed for the start of everything. You know, communism, capitalism, any ism. You know, we start Judaism. No, okay. Socialism.
Trade unions, you know.
But all of these things seem to have come out of the want to help the masses.
It's a Jewish thing.
We want to save the world. Can you give me a moment? I need to get a tissue.
Sure.
Yeah. So I want to ask, what do you think caused the schism?
I think I know exactly what caused the schism. Israel, in a sense, is a microcosm of Judaism at large. So when I say Israel, it's a bit different, as you know, between the United States Jews and Jews in Israel. But we have placed a tremendous emphasis on courting political figures, and we've gone away from our strengths, which are being a part of the community.
What do you mean courting political figures?
The Jewish community of influence seems more interested in gaining more influence than they are in doing the things that Jewish communities have done traditionally for the last, let's say, 75 years. It seems as if they are more interested in pleasing senators and pleasing congressmen and pleasing elected officials rather than being Jewish. Where being Jewish is a wonderful thing where you can be a part of everything that's going on without having to apologize for it. Very little of that is done now. You don't really see. I told you in Fort Lauderdale in 1991 that there were synagogues and there were rabbis with us. I doubt very much I could go back to that community now and get that type of support, not just from rabbis, but even from many Christian leaders. It's as if everything has changed. People's priorities seem to have evolved upward, in which the cause is no longer those who need help or those that we can help.
Tell me if I'm maybe hearing you wrong. Do you think that Jews should make their way out of politics? What do you mean the Jewish people have gone down the path of wanting to gain influence rather than be Jewish?
Okay. So, it's a perfect place to do it. So you know the Nation of Islam really well, right?
Not really well.
They've been around forever because their guy has been around forever and a day. And one of the ways in which they have succeeded is because they've taken young men from off the streets, from off the communities, or from jails, and they have told them about the righteous way in which things have to be done, in which human beings must live. Okay? And they use their book to teach them that this is the right way to do it. It's always been that way amongst all of the monotheistic religions. It's always been that way. But very little of that is done now. So if you meet the average person who's been influenced by that philosophy, you'd lose, because he's been out there working at it in his community for 30 years. But we've abdicated that. We don't do community things anymore.
I think this is something that I don't know if it bothers me or if it's just a curiosity that I have, and it's one of the reasons why I'm on some sort of search. But when it comes to Christians or when it comes to Muslims, they don't apologize for believing that their book is true. They don't apologize for preaching that they believe their book is true. There's a sense of almost pride in the way they speak about the belief in what they have. And I don't necessarily see it so much within the Jewish community, secular Jewish community, right? There's a really big split between Jews who believe the Torah was given by God at Mount Sinai and Jews who just think that the Torah in Judaism is just a culture and tradition that's been passed down from generation and don't really have the connection. And I'm somebody who's like, look, if these people are trying to go biblical on us, why aren't we standing up and being like, no, excuse me, we are the original people of the book. Like, don't you understand what this says? You know, why we don't push that more often. I am a Jew. God gave us the Torah. Yes. Whether you want to believe it or not, this is what we believe.
I think at the rabbinical level, I think the world is different to the congregationist. The person in the congregation doesn't really see the world the same way their rabbis see it. Because I've spent my life in both levels, I have to tell you that to all of the ministers, because that's what they are, to all of the ministers, it's there isn't that much of a conflict. The conflicts tend to be with the congregants, you know, as in which one is better and which way it works. Jews have been able to maybe you're thinking secular Jews, but Jews have been able to be a part of every facet of American life, every facet. They've influenced it in ways that are unbelievable for the last, I'm going to use 100 as a
right,
number.
but I think that you could go all the way back. You could go all the way back to Joseph.
Yeah,
you go all the way back to Joseph. Jews have been able to make themselves a part of any culture that we've been around for thousands of years. It's no different, you know. But it's almost like we don't learn. But what is there to learn? What are we doing wrong?
Well,
I'm so curious about an outside, like somebody who's not Jewish looking in, because a lot of times we can't see ourselves from the inside.
It's really hard for anyone to look at themselves. Someone has to tell you what you look like. That's why we have mirrors, right? Before we had mirrors,
I hate mirrors.
The richest people in the world were the people who had mirrors. Why? No one else could ever see what they look like. Only the really wealthy had mirrors. Have you ever been to Versailles?
No.
Okay, if you ever go to Versailles, you'll see enormous mirrors everywhere.
You want to take me?
It was a sign of extreme wealth. We, sir, have mirrors in every room. We can look at ourselves. So no, people tend to, we need someone to tell us every once in a while what we look like. Because we do not have all the answers. I don't even claim to have most of the answers. I just want to have a relationship in which we can get along and we can work so that everyone could live their lives to the best of their ability.
So what does the Jew look like to the outside world
today?
Yeah.
I would like to say that the media has, in a very, very short space of time, dug up some age-old tropes and some time-worn pieces of garbage, and one by one, they are piling these definitions upon Jews to the point where I am not quite sure what we saw in the United States over the last in the universities was symptomatic of something that I could feel. I could feel that there was a shift. There seemed to be a cultural, societal, I won't say religious, not religious. There seemed to be a cultural, intellectual, societal shift to which Jews were being viewed differently.
Do you think that this was happening pre-October 7th, or
Yes.
it just exploded?
It exploded. So
exploded during October 7th.
It came to light, but
right, but it was like bubbling under the
it
surface.
was bubbling. It's been there, 15, maybe 10, 15 years is when it started creating a problem, because more and more people would be saying things that they never said before. You would never hear African American churches, I mean to this day, speak badly of Jews. I'm not sure if you know that. You would never hear them speak badly of Jews. But you will hear a newer generation because something has changed. It's as if the public relations job is working for the wrong reason, in the wrong way.
I think this ties us back to your kind of life's work at the current moment, because it seems that never again is not never again.
Unfortunately, it's a topic that it weighs really heavily on me because I don't like to think of myself as seeing bad things in the future. But when I got here in 2016, I knew that something was changing. The older folks, like my main subject that I studied, my main subject is Anabasan, infant, orphan, Holocaust survivor. This small, this big, most wonderful person in the world. To have her with me for years, telling me everything that she thought. Everything that she thought wasn't good. There were some thoughts she said that would horrify you, but you've heard it before. If you dealt with Holocaust survivors, many of them don't believe in a divine person at all, because they said, how could, if there is someone, he would have deserted us. So I don't believe in anyone. So I've heard this.
Many Holocaust survivors you talk
Holocaust
to
survivors,
don't believe in God or
do
anything.
not believe. They do not. I
mean,
understand.
It does. I also can understand.
Yeah, but I get it. But she said something that's even more succinct. She said, human beings are the worst animals on this earth. She didn't say Nazis. The little girl who had to hide for almost 3 years in the in the pit in the middle of the field, in the crevices in the pit in the middle of the field, because the guards would never go there. So she had no clothes in the beginning. She was totally naked, and a year in or so she got a shirt. That little child, she didn't say the Nazis are the worst thing on the face of the earth. She didn't say the Germans are the worst thing on the face of the earth. She said human beings are the worst animal on the face of this earth. Yet,
Yeah, we can be the best too.
she was the most carefree, happy, loving person.
Who is this person?
This person is the reason I'm married to that woman, because that's her grandmother. I was studying her grandmother as my Holocaust subject. So that's her granddaughter, which is my wife. She just passed away. So
Dynamics.
she gave me a couple examples, but I mean, Jewish people, they've heard a lot of this, and I didn't want to bring macabre stuff into your program. You hear it all the time, but she said there were two things she couldn't understand. She said the Germans would play Russian roulette with their weapons. So they'd bring a child up, put a bullet in, and then they would bet among themselves, which one will take, which chamber, right? And even those who didn't do that, there's a game they would play in her camp. Now, she is not watching this from in front, because children are killed instantly. She's watching it from the corners, from the trees, from where she's watching, like from afar, where they would take stakes and run it through the heads of the kids and hang them and laugh, and she said she repeats that without feeling, without emotion. But the fact that human beings treated other human beings in the camp, not the Germans, trying to survive, human beings become animals.
Oh,
so she has seen,
interesting.
so this is what she saw, that she felt that they were absolutely the worst, but yet in her life, everything is welcome, everyone is welcome, everyone do her. She's just, it doesn't matter. She doesn't even know what she doesn't know what a race or a creed or a religion is. She was just for everyone, and she lived her life really, really, really wonderfully.
Do you still keep in touch with? Do you still keep in touch with Holocaust survivors? I have to imagine.
So the list is going. To tell you the truth, it's a great question. Now that I'm thinking about it, the people that I've kept in touch with, every single one of them has passed away. I don't write at this moment. I don't have a subject that I spoke to before I'm shocked to realize myself that I spoke to before that's still here now. They're all gone. So you did ask me a very, very important question before. You said, what is this need you have to tell this story? So I have to tell you that both Heinz Schwartz, Hans Stetcher, and I'm sorry the name of the doctor in Canada, they all had one thing in common. They said, we pray that God will give you the strength to finish the work. And I believe that just by each person at different points in time, speaking, praying, wishing those things upon me is what made me want to continue, despite the fact that it took years and it took enormous time, emotion, and resources. And to be quite honest, the final project for that has to be written. It's there. It has not yet been written. The Road to Yareti, which is that thing that I sent you. The Road to Yareti.
I was going to ask what that is.
Oh, perfect. So the Yareti is an Amerindian, American Indian, or Amerindian. So the people in the Caribbean, Caribs and Arawaks, they are Amerindian.
Okay.
Okay. So the Amerindian word for Trinidad is Yareti. Yareti means the land of the butterfly, of the hummingbird. The land of the hummingbird, Yareti.
Okay.
So Trinidad, by the way, Trinidad calls itself, one of the three names it has is the land of the hummingbird. So that's what the Yareti is. So the road to Yareti is the road that the Jews took to get from wherever they were to Trinidad to establish their lives. So that's why the book is called The Road to Yareti.
So is it like... Is it like the Jewish underground railroad to...
So a small part of it is, but the second part of it, which we have not touched, which we will not have time today to touch, is this is just the first part of the story. Because remember, the people you're talking about, we never answered the why. We never really got into...
Why what?
Why Trinidad? Why this group of Jews? Why did these things happen? So that's a completely different story, because this is about history. It's about what was happening in the world that made Trinidad perhaps the most important single piece of real estate to the U.S. military.
You're doing this on purpose. You're leaving me on a cliffhanger to get you back, which I would.
I didn't want to conflate the two, because if I did it, it's because this is the second half of the story. Why? We answered everything, right? We did pretty well. So why Trinidad? Why there? Why these 1,500? There were other Jews in other places. You know that. Why did they do it there? So that was my second part of my life's quest. And this is where the entire story explodes into something else. That's not necessarily a Jewish story, but they happen to be at the cross of something that they were totally unaware of. Because the Second World War is about to begin, and the United States military and FDR, they've made a decision that before we go to war to Germany with Germany, we must protect the home front. To protect the home front, the United States, we always fight our wars outside of our territory, okay? We must set up a ring of protection for the United States. Ellie, it starts in Newfoundland, which was not part of Canada. It comes all the way down to Bermuda, to the Bahamas, military bases. We will set up military bases in an arc from Newfoundland in the north all the way to the very end of the Caribbean, which is Trinidad and Tobago. So the United States proposes an enormous budget in which they will set up submarine, destroyer, and military bases from here all the way there, so that when the Germans attack, because we believe the Germans will attack because they said
built
they
like
would.
a line.
They built a line, but the line is this line.
Yeah.
So if you're coming from the south, there are only two ways to get to us. If you come up past South America, the first thing you come to, Trinidad and Tobago. That's where the Caribbean begins. So they have this, and they go here, then they go Grenada, Barbados. We have, of course, Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. We have Jamaica, we have the Bahamas, we have the Bermuda, and we have Newfoundland. So this is what they did. They set up the entire U.S. military there. And in Trinidad at one point, there were 7 airfields, 7 military airfields on that little island. And the busiest air depot during World War II were on two places called Wallerfield and Carlsonfield in Trinidad, where I'm sorry I can't remember the number. The number of flights per day was astronomical. It was the busiest airfield during World War II. Yet no one, I don't mean to talk about Trinidad. That's not the story. The story was that there were Italian and German U-boats and warships that were sinking vessels throughout the Caribbean during 41 to 42. But we're not told that. We are told about the Greatest Generation. We see all these movies, they're all in Europe. But in order to protect the home front, we had to literally protect the home front. And we were under constant attack by the Germans in the Caribbean. That's why you never heard about it.
So is this the answer to why Trinidad and Tobago?
That's the beginning of the answer to why Trinidad. But the research, in order to get it, is what makes it really interesting, because you now need to. I had the.
And you're saying that's a whole nother show.
It's completely. We'll just do that, and that will be 2 hours. The research for this is just unbelievable. But remember, the Jews are there. They are in internment camps. It's exactly the same as Majdanek. Okay? They're going to be there for between 6 months to 3 years. Some of the boys are going to go to one of my favorite schools, St. Mary's College. Some of the girls are going to go to one of my favorite Catholic schools. The Jews, most of the Jews that I speak to in that period, the schools they went to were all Catholic schools, which shocks every Jew that I've ever heard in my life. Till you go to Miami, and you realize that there are universities that are Catholic universities with Jewish benefactors all over it. The Jews could not go to other schools, but they were allowed in Catholic schools, which is another story altogether.
All right, well, we're going to take that. We're going to put it in a box, and we're going to put it over here so it stays here for when you come back. But I want to end with this question.
Go ahead.
You said that everybody you had contact with has passed.
They're gone.
So with the Holocaust survivors dwindling away, how has your research changed, and how do you expect to bring over Never Again?
I consider that to be one of the best questions I've been asked in a very long time. The research has changed because I'm not in a rush anymore. They're gone. I tried to get to all of them, to get to the important parts of the story. I recorded it, a lot on video, tremendous amount, and that's written out. So there's not that impetus. I do understand that this generation faces a danger of being asleep in the light, which is that we think everybody knows about the Holocaust. We think they know what happened to the Jews. We think they understand what never again means. My contention is that I believe that is 100% wrong. I think that in every generation of 20 years, the entire reason, the raison d'etre, the reason for being is being diminished. It's being diminished to the point where 20 years from now, when they are all gone, you can go to the streets and there'll be people very much like the Chinese people that I met. I had delegations when I was at Haifa University. They would come by every 4 months. I would take them around Israel. None of them had ever heard of the Holocaust. Not one Chinese, of let's say 40 to 60 people per time. So of the 200, 250. Forget the students. They had never once heard of the Holocaust. We just came back from Africa. We were stationed in Africa. No one in Africa knows about the Holocaust.
Really?
No one in Africa knows about the Holocaust. And not that they don't care. How can you care if you don't know? So we tend to think that it's like, it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere at all times. Everybody knows about it.
No, but I have to imagine, because the Holocaust was mostly, it seems to have affected Europe, the European side of the world and the American world more so than it affected the African, the Middle Eastern, and the Far East.
Correct.
Countries in
Yes.
terms of the Holocaust itself. And I could be wrong on that.
You are 100%, but the world now is a lot more multicultural. So when you go in a place, you expect that X number of people would know about it. And the answer is you'll be sadly disappointed, because thankfully the universities such as the one that I attended And I think Yeshiva is doing the same thing now, Holocaust Studies. University of London and South London is also. But there aren't that many people who are non-Jews doing it. There's a message, this is a lesson you need to learn. If I speak of the Holocaust, the people who are not Jewish have a greater chance of listening to me than they do to a Jewish person.
Why?
Because I am like
No.
them. And they can ask a question without being offended, and I can answer it, and they go, oh, I understand. Oh, I get it. Because if you hear it from the Jews all the time, it's like, oh my gosh, the Jews, they always complain about the Holocaust, because that's what you get after a while. So this is what I can do. I still have some time left. I can use my time and my efforts to get the word out, complete the Road to Yareti, which was funded only by myself. No one put anything into this. All of the years of study, all of the travel, it was self-funded. And that's the other thing. It wore me out in terms of my resources. It wore me out in terms of my energy. But, maybe there'll be a resurgence of it and we can get it done and get it out there.
So do you think one of the better ways to continue the story of the Holocaust is actually through non-Jews?
Absolutely. It's being actively done at University of Haifa. A friend of mine just left Yeshiva University. He is Jewish, but he's not Israeli. He's not American. And he just completed his studies as well months ago. So, of course, I know people from all over the world. None of them, no, a few of them are, because some came from Canada, some are from the States. But quite a few of them came from other countries that are non-Jewish, and they can carry that message to their countries and to wherever they may go.
Well, do you have, there's a camera right here. Do you have anywhere that people can follow you if they want to search you up?
I think in about 3 months, the Road to Yareti will be up. The only vehicle I have now, we didn't talk about it because we said we'll compartmentalize, we'll keep it.
Right.
So there are a series of children's books that are related to the Caribbean that build on this story. My name is John, so there's a little character called Johnny Me, JohnnyMee.com, and this little kid writes about a world in time past of growing up in an idyllic, wonderful Caribbean setting. That's the only place you can go to now. And it's okay, we'll come back. By the time we get back, maybe I'll get the website up for the Road to Yareti. But JohnnyMee.com is the only one that's available now.
I can't wait to continue this conversation. This has been great. Thanks so much, John.
You're very welcome.